Today, I want to have a conversation about moral ambiguity and how that's created by elitism. And this is really a think piece. It's just like my observation. So, I was watching the show called The Industry. I don't know if any of you guys have ever heard of it. It's probably one of my favorite shows, although I didn't really like some of the undertones, like the themes that are associated with it. I want to talk about it today. Ooh, I'm on my roller chair, so excuse me if I'm like rolling all over the place. Okay. What is the difference between capitalism and elitism? Capitalism, to me, and by definition, is about prioritizing profit, encouraging free market and competition, right? Elitism is the belief that the 1% should have the most influence over the majority. That's elitism. One thing I really like about the show, The Industry, is that it showcases the balance between elitism and capitalism. A lot of people, specifically in this show, are going to talk about how they're going to demonize capitalism. Capitalism is the problem. That's why there's so much corruption. But in reality, I don't think that capitalism is what causes corruption. I think elitism is what causes corruption. And elitism also causes moral ambiguity. A great example of this in the show is Harper. Harper represents what every Black woman in every system represents, right? Overcoming all the odds based on the sheer will of her just not taking no as a fucking answer. She's just not willing to fail. And because she's not willing to fail, even in the midst of her own failure, that is what keeps her honestly alive in this entire system, where the system is constantly trying to like put their foot on her, right? So Harper represents what I feel like is the antithesis of elitism, right? She's not elite. She is the 99%. She represents the 99% that comes from lack, that comes from struggle, that had to do a lot of things that she otherwise might not have wanted to do for the sake of succeeding and moving up the pipeline. But what we don't pay attention to is why those things are there. Like, why does she have to fight so hard? Why is there a sense of lack and a sense of honest, like, having to fight for everything that follows her everywhere, right? And it wasn't until the last episode of season, I think 4 that we're on, where she was basically sitting at a table with the elite, and they nicely, but also in a very nasty way, made her feel like as though she did not belong there and that she had no right to be there, or that she didn't even have enough money to be there when she had all the right to be there and she had all of the money to be there. You get what I'm saying? And it really showcased how the elite don't necessarily have an issue with capitalism. They have an issue with capitalism being a direct competitor to their elitism, right? Because if there's one thing that capitalism will do, especially in a competitive market, is it'll force you to have to get better. You get what I'm saying? One season you could be winning, but if the next season your product is being upstaged or outshined by the next generation or by another person who might not look like you or might not act like you or might not believe in your beliefs or share your values, the market don't care. You get what I'm saying? Like, the market don't care. The market is going to go with what is actually the best, right? And if Harper is the best, but Harper also stands as a direct competitor to elitist beliefs, values, systems, and comfortability, right? Then Harper is now the outcast. Harper is now the person that is considered to be the problem or the issue, because Harper didn't get to the 1% because she was of the 1%. Harper got to the 1% because of her benefiting from capitalist systems. You get what I'm saying? Because Harper put profit and competition above everything else. And not only was she able to survive, right? But she was also able to get to the 1% and sit at the same table, because capitalism doesn't shun you out. Capitalism doesn't care if you're a millionaire. Capitalism doesn't care if you're a brokey. Capitalism cares about the market. Capitalism prioritizes supply and demand. You get what I'm saying? And supply and demand is always shifting all the time. Elitism prioritizes consolidating and concentrating power amongst the ultra wealthy, amongst the 1%, right? Now, what does this have to do with moral ambiguity? So, if all of the power is concentrated amongst the 1% and amongst the wealthy, right, that means that the 99% of other people are at a disadvantage. When people are desperate for things like basic resources, knowledge, education, or even access, which Yasmin is going to be a great example of this, right? Yasmin and Henry. If you haven't watched this show, I recommend that you watch it. It's very raunchy, but when you really understand the undertones of like what it's saying and what it's demonstrating, you understand a lot about why things are set up a certain way. So Yasmin Hanani is a great example of elitism, right? She basically has these girls that are around her that are put at a disadvantage, and they're at the mercy of the greater powers in their life, right? They're underaged, and one of the girls, Jennifer, which used to be her assistant at the company, basically said, like, I don't want a bunch of money. I want access to a bunch of money. I want access to people who can give me a bunch of money for me and my friends. And the reason why is because when you are powerless and you don't come from elite families, you are constantly scraping and doing very like morally corrupt things in order to get to the elite, in order to get to the 1%. You get what I'm saying? And what people don't understand is that as you're fighting to get here, the 1% get to dictate what you have to go through in order to get there. The morally correct thing would be to see all of us eat and for all of us to have access to resources, fair and free market, right? Here's where the moral ambiguity comes in. If I'm starving and you are my neighbor and you are starving, right? And there is a strict, very limited amount of resources available to both of us. Instead of us fighting the oppressor, we are fighting each other over limited resources that have been limited because of our oppressor. Does that make sense? And what we do and the different type of circumstances that arise create this sense of moral ambiguity, because the truth is that deep down, it does not make me feel good to see other people in my nation starving. However, because there are such limited resources, I have to survive. I have no choice but to survive. So giving to my neighbor is literally a direct threat to my own sustainability. So it's harder to be morally in alignment because of the fact that there is oppression and a restriction on resources, right? That has nothing to do with capitalism, right? Capitalism is a tool. It's about supply and demand, profit, and free market. Capitalism is a tool in order to generate and cycle money and circulate value, right? Elitism is also a tool, but it's also an ideology that is completely out of alignment with what is morally correct, right? That's just my perception. Anyway, but that's all. Please make sure if you like this video that you hit the like button and you subscribe and you turn on post notifications to always instead of sometimes, because YouTube don't play with me. My goal is to get to 500 subscribers by December of this year. So please help me share this video and also come back for the next one where I'm going to be talking more about, finance, global politics, and decentralized financial technology. And also the psychology that comes with all of this, that is at play with all of this. If you want to know more about that, let me know. Also, comment down below what you think about moral ambiguity when it comes to elitism or capitalism or the world in general, whatever have you. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye.